for this week, I do have Andy coming back, passes PMP just before the new year on the 29th, if I remember correctly, Andy. Big smile there. And, like I said, I'll get Ben and Joe on the same train as well. We're on target to get the folks, past their PMP. So Andy, like always, kick it off with, how your PMP went. And then, of course, I got some questions for you to see how it went. So congrats.
Yeah, thank you. No, so it was good. I took the PMP in person on the 29th, bright and early, 8 a.m. Kind of just, what everybody else said. Got to the testing center about 25 minutes early. There was a lot of people in line because it's a bigger site for the area. So I had to kind of wait while other people checked in. Sorry, my dogs are about to go crazy. Yeah, when I got checked in with the ID, they were very, very specific about I had to roll up my sleeves, I had to pull up my pant legs, I had to pull up my pockets. Just leave everything at home, leave it in your car, whatever you got to do. And then at the breaks as well. When I took the breaks and when I came back in, they made me do all the same stuff. But I think there's a couple of things that I haven't really heard from other people in terms of the test, taking it in person right now. One of the things that really kind of, Ben, I know you said you've been taking a lot of practice tests. If you're going to a site, I don't know if you're going to a site or not, take one or two with a mask on if you have to wear a mask, because that was a lot more annoying than what I thought. Like kind of like having that on while going through the test, like that's not something I've heard, but and I have to wear one to work every day, but that's not something I've heard other people say. And I was fidgeting a lot. So just kind of get used to that while you're answering questions. I mean, that's a weird suggestion, but for people that are taking it in person. And then in terms of the questions, I know people have said this, EVM, one question, it wasn't even an actual, solving math. It was just interpreting. So I had the exact same drag and drop questions that the guys last week talked about. It was the, was it the power interest grid where I just had to drag the different
keep inform and console, etc.
Yeah. So that same drag and drop, that was the only drag and drop, probably, like they said as well, maybe 5 questions or so where there were more than one answer. So more than 4 choices and then more than one answer. Those are actually, in my estimation, some of the easier questions on the exam, which was interesting. But then really the big thing is for me was the questions that I got were we always say they're situational. They're much more the hard question made easy questions than what you're going to get in the, there's not one question on there where they say, hey, what does this mean? Or what's the definition of this? Every single question is situational, every one. And I started out, I got through the first 10 questions. I'm like, oh boy, I'm not sure where I'm going right here. Cause I was, definitely there's usually one answer that's just, we're just going to get rid of it right away. Yeah. Most of the time I could get down to the 50-50 pretty easy, but not always. In some cases there were like three answers where I was like, I don't know, they all sound fine to me. I want to say, and then in terms of time, I took both breaks. You need those breaks. I mean, I would say you kind of, if you're not taking those breaks, I more power to you. But I think I heard, I don't know if Kira say a minute ago, you can't sit still. Like when you get to that 60th question, you're ready to kind of go, run around in circles or something for 10 minutes. But I took the breaks, finished with 35 minutes left.
Wow.
So I did not flag any questions and I did not go back and review anything. I basically told myself, look, you're either going to know it or you're not. And
yeah, it sounds like it.
I knew I was doing okay in terms of time. So if there was a question where I thought I needed to spend a little bit more time on, I spent the time then. I didn't do anything. I used the tools available to me. I used the highlighter. I used the strike through quite a bit. And really that was kind of to pace myself a little bit, not rush through things. I kind of used it as I know, Bonita, we talked last week after the call about kind of slowing down a little bit. So I actually used some of those tools to help me slow down a little bit in terms of like highlighting key words and things like that. So Yeah, and then like others have said, you get to the very end and you click that submit button and you hold your breath, and up pops that little congratulations.
All right.
That's it, right? You
Yeah.
pretty much like I think for you, Andy, like you're pretty focused, determined. It's like it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But based on what I'm hearing, I'm glad you managed well. Time has always been a big issue for a lot of people, pacing and being okay with the pressure and like the sitting through for like 4 hours. But based on what I'm hearing is that no surprises to you on the PMP exam, because I think you and like many others, you've came from a very similar study path, gone through the 7-day, attend these calls and do the practice tests. Would you say that's fairly accurate to say that, no surprises, you felt prepared going in?
Yeah, I think in those last couple of days, Ben, you weren't on the call last week, but I kind of did your thing where I watched a few of the videos in 1.5 or two times speed. I think you had mentioned doing that, and the Agile Made Easy video and the 7 key flows. Kind of watch those probably 2 or 3 times each in the couple days leading up. But again, when we were on this call last week, I was taking it at 8 o'clock the next morning. I didn't do anything after this call. I got a good night's sleep, and I was like, all right, if I either know it or I don't. The questions were definitely, I mean, I thought maybe they'd throw me 1 or 2 where it's just like, what does this mean? And I'm telling you, there wasn't one question that's not situational. So just, focus on those hard questions made easy and the questions you guys do in these calls tonight, and you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Did you get any graphs or chart? I've always been kind of curious to see if PMIs are rolling out a lot of those. I've only heard like a handful. Like I never got one. I did get like a bunch of students got like a graph, an S curve, and that was pretty much it.
No, I didn't see any graphs or curves.
Okay.
Like I said, just the one EVM question, and it was kind of like, you have this, what does it mean? It wasn't like I didn't have to solve it. I did, as soon as I walked in, I wrote down all the equations and stuff, just kind of as a crutch, make myself feel better that they were there. I kind of figured I wasn't going to need them, but I'm like, you know what, if I do, they're there. And actually, I suppose I cheated a little bit because I was actually kind of writing them down during some of the tutorial time. So I took the tutorial time to actually write down the equations.
I see.
So I didn't waste my actual test time writing down the equations. So
I didn't know
I
you can
don't
access
think it
the
was
whiteboard during tutorial, and it stays
well. So
there?
I had a physical whiteboard. So I actually had a piece of like an erasable sheet and a dry erase marker. So I would click one of the buttons on the tutorial, and then I would write down some of the equations, and then like 30 seconds later, I'd click on the next button. And
is that an insider news from your wife, or like the proctor was just fine with it?
No, I mean, they didn't tell me I couldn't. So I mean,
were you at a test center?
He was at a test center.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So and then in terms of the things, I scored 3 above targets, and I do like the little thing. You get, I guess it said 48 hours, but it was more like 24 hours later that actually tells you for all the different tasks how you did on those. So there were a few spots that I didn't do great on. So I mean, I guess that's hindsight now, but it's maybe some areas to focus in the PDUs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
That's right. So what Andy is referring to is the exam report analysis, which breaks down the different areas and the different steps. It doesn't tell you exactly where, but it gives a good description in terms of which area you're kind of on target, above or below. If you take the exam in person, you do get your results breakdown right away, versus if you do remote, you gotta wait for the next day, etc. So Andy's like, like all of us, or many of us, he works full time. He's been with the program for, I would say, since beginning of November, something like that.
Late October, beginning of November, when I really kind of hit it hard.
Yeah. So, I mean, for a person working full time, got family, and, committing to these, courses is roughly about, a month or and a bit more, if depending on how much time you want to dedicate to yourself. But it is doable within, a couple of weeks as well. I think I'm pretty happy with the questions I have. Of course, this time is for the group, for those that is interested. In terms of how Andy prepared for it, mentality going in. I'm opening up the floor for any questions for Andy.
What kind of scores were you looking at as you're going through the practice tests and things like that? Because I'm seeing mine, you know, they're not where I want them to be. They're going up, then they go back down, then they go back up a little bit. But when did you kind of hit that point of, you know, I'm comfortable? Because I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm ever going to be comfortable, you know?
I would say when I got done with the 7 days, before I had really jumped into like the weak areas and stuff like that, I was honestly I was in the 55 to 65 range, and I was like, oh man, I am never going to figure this out. And then probably over the next, I can't remember the exact timing, but probably over the next 2 to 3 weeks, they started to slowly creep up. And by the time I think on the Sunday before my exam, so like I said, it's 2 days before my exam, I was hitting between 70 and 80% pretty consistently, usually closer to 80. But it took me a minute to get there, right? It wasn't like as soon as I finished the videos, I was there. It took that kind of the go back and review, you know, once you're done with the actual 7 days, to go back and review, kind of going deeper into day 5 a little bit, reviewing some of the things that, I mean, I guess even though I do waterfall, I kind of forgot some of that stuff. So I would say I kind of went from that 60, you can see that progression from like 60, and then the next week it was more in the 70s, and then the next week it was closer to 80. So like that last 3 weeks before the exam, I really saw a lot of progress.
What was your game plan for that? Were you doing just like the like a 60-minute or 60 question test each day, and then just looking at the ones you got wrong? What was your kind of game plan going through and reviewing?
Yeah, so when you take those tests, it actually gives you I think you get a kind of a nice breakdown of the different areas. And where if I knew, so I would review the individual questions, but if I knew there was an area, procurement, for example, that was one of my struggles the entire time. So I would go back and review the procurement videos and stuff like that. And then there's the individual tests for the individual areas. So instead of taking, if I knew I was weak in an area, instead of taking a full 60 question simulator, I would go back and just take the procurement area, or I would go back and take the risk area. And I mean, I probably took those, you know, a half dozen times each, just the little 20 question ones, I think they are.
Yeah.
And then I shouldn't probably say this out loud, but I never did the full 180 before the exam. Because I knew time wasn't going to be an issue for me. Like I talked to Benita last week about slowing myself down more than anything. But I probably did in the week leading up, and it was kind of tough because it was the week of Christmas, but so maybe a week plus leading up, I did at least 60 questions a day. I did 120 twice, I think. But I will say, if you do it, I don't know, Benita, you can comment on this too if you want. Like if you do it too much, you do start to see the same questions pop up. So I wouldn't necessarily take so many of them that you just lure yourself into this false sense of security on those questions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense, and it depends on the person, because, you know, maybe I'm poor on my time management, but I'm really good on my knowledge, or like I'm really anxious compared to like my knowledge. So it depends on what the person need at that point. My message has always been, you know, the purpose of taking mock is, yes, to test your knowledge, but to really test how you would behave during that 4 hour. Are you able to focus? Are you able to stay on course? Are you able to pace yourself? If you can achieve it, no problem with your test, I don't really see a need to do it like 3-4 times, right? And you do get a sense of like, am I ready, right? Like Andy, I think you said, you know, your scores were improving steadily over time. That's always a good indicator. So it really depends on the person, what they need to work on. But the benefit of having mock is for not just the knowledge check, many aspect to it. And yes, if you've done like way too many questions, I think you're at the point where like, I don't even want to see another question. I've seen it already. So yeah, that would be usually what typically happens. Majority of the students do take some sort of practice. I think you definitely have to take something. Don't just kind of go in and think you're ready. But at least a longer version, minimum like 50 to 100 to pace yourself. Don't do like a bunch of tens and and like I'm good, good to go. So yeah, I think that's what is really important in why we want to practice and do mocks.
Yeah, one of the other things that, I'm not a skeptic by any means of this system, especially now that I've taken it and I've seen the questions and stuff, but like just to make myself feel a little bit better in the last, week or so.
Yeah.
I also just went on YouTube and I just typed in, practice PMP questions. And there's a couple other people out there that have a decent systems. And I was doing better on their practice tests than I was on ours. So if you're doing well on ours, you're going to do fine on all the other ones that are out there.
I have heard many said that, our questions are even harder than the PMP. So if you're doing decent score, you should be good. Like I went in with a 78% average, a bunch of 80s, 90s, 70s, but averaging, I was going in with like a 78. I would say of all the people that I've worked with in the last year, 70% of them are usually in the high 70s. And then you do get like the 10% that's like in the 90s. And then you get like the remaining like 20% that hovers around the 80. So it's not, you guys heard me said it before. It's not like you have to get 80 in order to go in. You can go in with the 70. I've had students go in with low 70s before too. It's all about the package, right? Like the whole endurance, the knowledge. Are you able to see like the fluff in the questions and get right down to the issue and find the 50-50?
Yeah, and the other thing, I know we've talked about it a lot in this question, and you do have to, if you're talking about mental preparation, every question is its own unique thing. Like just you're gonna see questions that are totally off the wall, and you just have to, take an educated guess, move on to the next one, and forget about it. That's huge.
Very, very important. And I'm glad you brought that up is, to not carry the baggage over, right? Don't let that one question that's out in the left field impact how you're going to perform in the next one, because it's not going to be a part 1, part 2 question. Every situation is going to be unique.
Yeah. That is one thing that I hadn't heard people mention, but I did see questions that were very similar with just slight, slight intricate difference. Like at first you start reading it, you're like, I think I've seen this before. And then there's just something different at the end that changes it up just a little bit.
Question with 1,000 faces, right? Scott had mentioned this is, they're trying to test your knowledge on, let's say, change management. The question could be similar, but something is slightly different about that question. But all they want to get to is how you're going to deal with change.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge, tons of questions about change and risk management. I thought they were heavy there. I know people definitely heavy in hybrid and agile too. It was like everybody else has said over the last couple of weeks. I don't even know if I could put a percentage on it. I was so just kind of hyper focused, but it was definitely heavy in hybrid and agile.
Additional questions, Ben, the rest of the folks?
I think that's everything I had. I'm sure I'll think of more. I always do.
All right. Well, if there's no additional questions, I'll finish off with one, and I'll let Andy enjoy the rest of the Tuesday evenings for the rest of the year. Is that, if you were to give one advice or tip for anyone that's about to go in to take their exam, or like a bit worried, a bit scared, not sure if they're going to do well, what would that advice be? Just thinking back on your experience and the community support, etc.
Yeah, it's funny because I think when I first signed up for this program, Scott, I had said, I want to be able to take this by like spring of 2022, and I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna have enough knowledge to take this test by, he's like, no, we're gonna do this in December. We'll have it done by Christmas or by New Year. I'm like, no way. But I think the biggest piece of advice is if you trust the system and you're doing well on the practice exams and stuff like that, you're going to do fine. Like I over worried myself. And I think if you're doing what Bonita says and what Scott says and all the other coaches, and you're scoring where you need to be, and they tell you you're ready, you're ready. So just trust the system. I think that's the biggest piece of advice, because I think want to say I over worried myself, but I was like,
It's important. It's
That's-
an important exam, right? Of course, you
Yeah.
know, you don't want to spend the time and the money to redo it. It's fair to feel that way, but it's kind of like that trust fall test, right? Like,
yeah,
follow the program, stick to these calls, we'll work something out, and we'll be blunt, right? Like, we'll be honest if we feel like you got something to work on. I've said it to students in the past. It's kind of like, well, you're overthinking the question. It's not that difficult. It's pretty straightforward. Or, let's not, assume things and stick with the facts here. So that's very important. Thank you for that, Andy.
Yeah.
Yep. Other than that, PDU credits over the next 3 years. Any question about that, shoot me an email. I think you have all the links and info I sent out. Other than that, there is a celebratory call tomorrow for all the students that pass tomorrow, January 5th, tomorrow, Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. So I think Scott is doing kind of like a message to all the group. And also there's going to be some giveaways, some money, some prizes. So, if you're free, stop by and, join that call. I'll be there.
okay. How do I get on that? Is there an invite for that one? or-
Yeah, there's a Zoom link. So let me forward you that. I think Scott's just catching up on the list of students. So I'll forward you that link for tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Great. Okay. Well, I'll miss seeing you around. We'll get Joe and Ben on the way as well.
Yeah,
Other
for
than
sure.
that, it's been fun working with you, and
Yeah.
you take care and have the rest of the year off
Yeah.
from this evening.
No, same to all you guys. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah.
Trust the system, and good luck to all of you guys on your exams. Hopefully sooner rather than later. And
Yeah.
I'll talk to you all later.
Sounds good. All right.
All right.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.